各位观众大家好，欢迎收看邓洪说法节目，我是美国联邦律师邓洪，让知法守法，据理力争。在今天我收到了一个电子邮件我的好朋友以前第一位华裔的洛杉矶市议员胡兆基 Michael Wu 发个电子邮件，他呼吁我能够参与这个项目，就是要在洛杉矶建立一个华人大屠杀纪念馆。当然这个创意这个很多人都不知道，洛杉矶 Chinatown 在1871年发生这个华人大屠杀的案件。当然这个案件我大概跟大家介绍一下子发生的背景。当时在1871年有当时洛杉矶地区在现在 Chinatown 的位置也是现在的博物馆旁边，华人博物馆旁边的话，这条巷里边是一个小小的 Chinatown， 里边大概有200多名华人，大部分都是做苦力过来的。在华埠里边虽然人不多，但是的话有2个帮派，一个这个华人帮派，一个的话是叫做这个洪州，另外一个叫尼永，这2个堂，这2堂里边的话经常会因为他们所来的地方不一样，所以经常有一些纠纷。那有一天这个警察正在酒吧里边去喝点酒，没想到的话路边有人有一个人跌倒在地上，警察就一检查发现的话，这个有人是这个在脖子里边的话，一个中国人叫阿蔡，然后脖子的话是这个中弹的，所以他赶紧吹口哨叫其他的警察过来。那其他的警察后来有一个警察也是那时候的警察的话，他们都是做义务的，他们赶过来帮忙，没想到的话这个 Thompson 被暴徒也可能是帮派的打死了。所以一名警察，白人警察被打死，然后的话马上那时候事故发生在4点多钟，那时候到了晚上的时候，基本上有500多名白人的暴徒已经将整个 Chinatown 围起来。所以当时他们这些后来这个 Harris 这个警察当时是警察局局长，抓到了这个一个嫌疑犯，有可能这个嫌疑犯是杀死阿踹，有可能是打伤 Thompson 的，所以他正逮到他的之后，正要将从 Chinatown 大楼里边的话带出来，没想到这些暴徒不买账，将这个警察打了一顿，以后将这个嫌疑犯中国人的话拖走之后，在这个街道上面要开始要将这个中国人吊死。当时这些暴徒说吊死所有中国人，清洗中国城，所以刚好这个华人被抓了之后，又上吊了之后的话，要吊死他，掉了下来的话，这个警察还是说我们将他放到监狱里边去，但是这些暴徒已经失控，还是再度将这个华人吊死。后来一见到华人就打，一见到华人就抓，然后一共那天晚上 Chinatown 这几栋大楼全部被烧，在里边的话一共后来那天晚上所有的话是火光冲天的。第二天发现了15具尸体，其中包括了有14岁的一个男孩子，还有就是当时唯一一个医生叫做七龙痛，也是在这个被吊死的人之中，其中有4名是被开枪打死，然后一共加起来，然后有19名的中国人被打死了。这当时占整个中国城人口的10%。这个大屠杀之后，然后 Chinatown 基本上整个大楼都被烧掉了。那这个案子现在在这个被烧这个吊死的遗址上面的话，洛杉矶成立了这个华人博物馆。这个华人博物馆的话，也是纪念这个 华人在洛杉矶地区被屠杀的这个历史。当然很重要一点的话，当时华人都是做苦力，之所以被屠杀，就是因为没有任何的政治力量。我们那时候移民来这边都是修铁路，后来留下来都是做餐馆、做洗衣房这些工作，所以华人很少会从事政治。但是在1870年那时候，我们可以看出华人大屠杀之后，后来又有这个排华法案，是透过法律来这个来排斥华人的。在这个屠杀案子里边，后来有30多名歹徒、暴徒的话被抓了，要起诉。但是所有的华人目击证人按照加州的法规是不能够出庭作证，因为加州法规规定华人资格不具备做证人的资格，所以的话真正被绳之以法的只有8名人士被这个起诉判罪的。参与政治非常重要，法律立法的话也非常重要。中国人不能够作为证人，在加州法律里边的话是明文规定的。排华也是在国会明文规定的。立法谁来立法？立法是透过我们的民选官员，是透过我们的国会议员来立联邦法，透过我们的州众议员、参议员两院的来立法提案，州长签署。很多人都觉得法律不公平，但是往往不参与。我们华人往往在事后法律通过受了影响，才怨天卖命，觉得不公平而不参与。随着我们华人力量的壮大，也有越来越多华人投身政治。最早在我们加州选举的最高的华裔民选官员就是马奇芳玉于江月桂。于江月桂他是我们的州务卿，也是第一个这个职位最高的民选官员。当然在他带动的时候，那时候80年代他当选，我刚好在90年代在华文媒体里边担任记者，我跑的是政治路线。我认为华人参政至关重要。在我在媒体，我在美国学的话是新闻学，我的教授常常跟我说，我们要依照事实来报道，但是的话不能够轻易这个相信，一定要查证再查证。所以这个部分，同时我在开始在华文媒体做的时候，我的导师 Dr. Tom Riley 他也说，华文的媒体你们扮演的角色至关重要。后来我在世界报开始做记者，我的这个上司也是总编辑郭俊良也跟我们再三嘱咐，我们华文记者的角色是3个桥梁，一个是我们社区之间的桥梁，第二个桥梁是我们新移民读者之间跟我们以往的来源地中国、台湾、香港这些来源地之间的桥梁。更重要一个角色是我们华人跟美国主流社区的桥梁。所以的话，因为我们大部分的读者民众都不讲英文，所以的话，我们作为记者，我们更应该承担起看门口的作用。根据这个理念，我在采跑政治的时候，我一方面求证，另外一方面的话，扮演一个角色是替我们华人社区把关，遇到一些不公平、不合理的法案，我会让社区知道。那有一个事件的话，于江月桂他准备要退休，然后他要准备这个他筹了很多钱，他本来没有想退休的这个后来因为这个克林顿要提名他出任这个Micronesia 这个大使，所以的话他筹了200万，我们很多华人都因为是要支持华人参政，给了他钱。当时胡兆基是洛杉矶第一位华裔的市议员，他曾经也想竞选洛杉矶的市长 失利之后，他想的话，继承于江月桂的这个职位，也要竞选这个州务卿的职位。但是于江月桂他手下一个助理叫 Tony Miller， 跟他20多年，也想接老板的位置，所以的话，后来于江月桂的话，将华人社区筹到的200万的钱以后转给了 Tony Miller 他的副手。但是这个钱是华人辛辛苦苦捐给于江月桂，想办法支持华人参政，所以很多支持者就责问于江月桂，为什么你这是华人社区筹来的钱，这200万不容易，为什么你不交给胡兆基，以后反而交给其他人呢？当然于江月桂他接受我采访的时候，他说我没有将这些钱转给 Tony Miller。 我的教授讲过，不要相信政客的任何说话，一定要查证查证再查证。我到了州务卿办公室，于江月桂他自己的办公室，按照法律程序，我拿出了他的筹款记录，拿出了所有的这些记录，他明明白白将钱转给了 Tony Miller。 当然如果他实话实说因为 Tony Miller 跟我20年，我要支持他，那是完全合理也可以理解的。但是你来欺骗我，欺骗华人社区，我将这个新闻暴露出去，后来很多于江月桂的朋友都不原谅他，他觉得你怎么能够骗我们呢？你明明将钱转给他了。所以于江月桂第一次尝到的话，一个华文记者会切他底的这种遭遇。后来他的儿子 Matt Fong 邝介林要竞选加州财务长的时候，他唯一一个政治的建议就是说 Matt， 你要选举的时候的话，你要跟华文媒体见面的时候，你要小心 Daniel 邓洪这个人物，不要轻易讲话。当然对我来说，我作为一个记者，我要替我们华人社区把关，我要利用我的专业知识来看一下子，来挑战他们。所以在过去那么多年，我从90年开始在华人社区，以后跑到98年，报道了无数多的政客，在过程之中也看到了华人参政的踊跃。在过程之中，我永远都是首先支持华人参政，但是同样的，我们也不会因为你华人，你就能够出卖华人的权益。所以在过去那几年里边，华人的你可以看得出，民选官员从原来的只有5个手指可以选出来的这几个人这个民选官员从这个于江月桂还有这个陈李婉若赵美心的几个人，慢慢的扩充成为上百人的民选官员。在过程之中的话，因为我自己跑政治新闻也认识了很多朋友，并且的话，我对这些华裔民选官员的话也毫不客气。所以的话，后来在2015年，这民选官员的话，他也是将我颁奖了一个所谓的这个年度的这个人物当我的导师刘成威大法官一起领奖。所以我觉得我替华人社区把关，作为记者，作为律师，我尽到了我该做的责任。但是最近这几年里边的话，这个我自己也很失望。为什么的话，华人参政虽然呢很多政客、很多政治人物是华人，但是我们的记者没有尽到看门狗的作用。这些华人的民选官员凭着他自己华人脸孔，以后来欺骗华人社区。就如赵美心的选区里边，你可以看得出，我们现在他的选区包括了 Alhambra、Arcadia、Bradbury、Claremont、Montreal Park、Pasadena、Rosemead、South Pasadena、San Gabriel、San Marino、Temple City， 这些都是华人密集的地区。在他的选区里边，40%是 Asian 之中80%都是我们华人，还有30%是白人。所以理论上来说，这个选区应该70%是华人跟白人，只有30%不到是拉丁裔。 按照政策里边，其中很多拉丁裔都跟我们华人的理念相同，都希望的话，美国有一个平等的机会，能够有一个安全的环境，能有一个良好的教育环境。但是在过去那么多年下来，我们可以看得出赵美心代表了我们这个国会选区，他的政策，他唯一一个在国会里边立法通过的，就像杜瓦提的邮局改名字了。他的政客里边的话，他其实他所有的这些财务都是公开的，但是没有华文记者来揭露他。他是被我们华人社区的一个医疗网所收买的一个政客。从他的选举里边的话，你可以看得出，大部分捐钱的都是医生捐给他的。为什么的话，其实这个医疗机构透过几个医院完全垄断了。完全垄断了之后，司法部曾经因为并购这个事情出现垄断的事情进行调查，但是赵美心集团这些政治人物的话为他们撑腰，而导致现在华人社区里边，从 San Gabriel、Alhambra、Montreal Park 这些医院里边统一都是一个集团所拥有，没有任何竞争。所以保险的话，他一不接这个保险，那所有的病人的话都不能够看。所以这种垄断的话，已经伤害到华人的利益。没有华文媒体有这个智慧，有这个勇气来切入这些内幕。我很相信，但是的话，赵美心她的先生吴国庆，我们认识30多年，我对过去尤其是过去4年他的表现，我相当失望。我也希望更多的华人能够出来挑战他，能够切穿他的这些阴谋。在2年以前，我得罪了赵美心的一个得意门生，就是周本利。周本利他自己骗我们华人社区，他投票支持 SCA5， 要求我们伤害了我们华人子女升学的这个机会。我得罪了他，但是的话，我不怕。我也觉得我们民选官员，你的扮的角色是要替我们社区发音，立法保护我们选民的利益。我们现在游民问题、通货膨胀问题、治安问题、教育问题，面临那么多的挑战，而赵美心偏偏不管，而跑到 DC 去游行示威，为妇女争取堕胎权。这种做法跟我们的民众、我们的选民完全是违背的。但是太多这些华人侨团，只要赵美心到你的参会里边去拍个照，就支持，就捐款。赵美心还有他这一群政客，已经将我们华人社区当成傻瓜一样来玩，出卖我们的利益，我们还要帮他拍手叫好，所以令我伤心。不过我也看到了希望。2个礼拜以前，我认识的这位名叫做 Wes Hallman 的这个国会候选人，他就要挑战赵美心。我也提醒他，我说 Wes， 你很帅，你是 Top Gun 一个比 Tom Cruise 还帅的，你真的敢挑战赵美心吗？他说，我在国会跟赵美心，我是代表国防部跟赵美心联络，他给了我5分钟的时间，要谈国会预算案、国防预算案。赵美心给2分钟的时间，只称赞的话 ，Grandora 他的这个球队很棒，没有谈到任何国防预算。在赵美心自己发出的国防预算这个新闻里边，Wes 的话直接指出来，赵美心在撒谎，他根本是削减国防部的预算。所以我花了很长时间跟 Matt 讨论他的政见。我今天想跟大家分享一下子 Matt 他为什么参选，为什么 敢于挑战赵美心。好，希望大家能够好好欣赏思考一下子，我们华人参政面临的这个处境，是要唯独看脸孔支持啊，或者是支持一个能够理解我们华人社区利益的一个候选人。谢谢大家的收看。This morning I have a very honor to have a chance to interview Wes. I never met him in person, but through the Zoom and through our good friends Mike and Tonovish, we get a chance to talk to each other and share his political view. Today, I have a chance to introduce Wes to our audience and see why he's running for congressional seat. Good morning, Wes.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Good,
good, Daniel. And thanks for having me on. This is wonderful. And it's absolutely my honor to be on this. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, let me going to share the screen with some of the background that West have. And as all the Chinese immigrant knows that the reason I came to the first one of the movie I was really impressed is the Top Gun. Tom Cruise played very well. That film released in 1986. I was just arrived in the United States in 1987. That's one of the first movies I watched. I was very impressed, not only the handsome, but also his aggressiveness and hardworking. But that's in the movie. In reality, Wes is the one who, the real Top Gun. Wes, share with me, your experience as the pilot. Especially, very few people have a chance to fly F-15C. Share with us how you started, and then why you pick your background.
Okay, well, great. We can talk about my roots here in the San Gabriel Valley yesterday, but I'll just tell you a little bit of how I ended up in fighter jets, and yeah, I got to fly very blessed to fly the F-15C. What we who flew that call the world's greatest air superiority fighter. Yes. Which still has the best record ever in the air-to-air environment, with well over 100 kills to no losses, which is absolutely phenomenal. And then later the F-22. Very long story short, I don't have my family doesn't have a military background, but my dad was a salesman who traveled all over the Western United States, and our summer vacations or to jump in the car with him and go on one of his trips. And in the summer I was 9 years old, we found ourselves in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and got a tour of the Air Force Academy. And when we got the tour of the academy, I have two older brothers. They were really gearing it to the tour to my oldest brother, who was almost 14 at the time, but he couldn't have cared less. And but we're standing there overlooking the big square area in the middle of campus with a fighter jet at each corner of the square, and the tour guide, who was a captain in the Air Force, saying that you had to be to go there and then later fly in the Air Force, you had to be the best athlete, you had to be the best student, you had to be the best leader. And I had this incredible desire to both be the best and to serve. And I told my mom that day that's where I was going to go to school. So if you fast forward, I went off to the Air Force Academy on a nomination and later appointment through our Congressman David Dreyer at the time. And I did very well at the academy. I got my pilot slot, went off to pilot training in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was diehard to get into a fighter. Yes. This was when they, right after I was in pilot training during the first Gulf War, and we had some massive budget cuts afterwards. So what I chose to do is, because I graduated high enough in my class to qualify for a fighter, I chose to wait for my fighter. I went off to The Ohio State University, got a master's degree in international relations, did an internship in the Pentagon, and then I got my fighter. And I tell you what, flying a fighter is one of the most intense, rewarding, and I think important things that I've ever done in my life. The F-15 school, the 6 months of that was about 3 times harder than the 4 years at the Air Force Academy. And there is zero slack. And like the way our country should be, it's completely merit based. And that's why you see fighter pilots from all kinds of backgrounds. It's who can do the mission, because that mission is so important that when you look across and you see another jet, you know that person knows what they're doing, and they're going to help defend you and carry out the mission with you. And they're probably going to save your life at some point. So this is a tight-knit group of individuals that work extremely hard at what they do. And what it is both physically and mentally demanding. So you have to be in amazing physical shape while you're doing this. And then your mind has to be in the game at all times, because if your mind even drifts off for a second, when you're traveling at over 1.5 times the speed of sound, that's you're traveling a long distance in that 1 second. And so you have to be on at all times, knowing exactly what you're doing and covering the other guy. Wow. The other thing I'll say about flying fighters, and we could talk with our hands about dogfighting and things like that. But the other thing that I'll say about flying fighters, and this is a shout out to the great Americans who design and build these aircraft. They are the greatest machines ever built by human hands.
Wow.
I mean, when I put on the F-22, when I strapped that thing on, I knew that when I took off into the sky that nobody else could challenge me.
Yes.
And we have got to keep that advantage as a nation, which we are slowly losing it, and we can talk about that, Daniel. But the bottom line is the people that have designed and built those aircraft are really heroes as well, and they are my personal heroes because they give us that advantage. And by the way, when you're flying around with 80,000 pounds of thrust coming out the back end and pulling 9.5 Gs in the aircraft, you know you're doing something amazing, and that those people that have given it to us are equally and even more so amazing.
Well, Wes, you yourself is a hero, our community hero. I want to, thank you for what you have done for our country and for our community. You've been in military for 28 years, right?
I was 27 years active duty, and then I had 4 years at the academy. So I wore the uniform for 31 straight years. Now,
also you would be one of those 12 White House fellow. A lot of people, this is another very prestigious. You have a chance to work in the White House, right? And then, tell me about the White House fellowship.
Oh, it's an amazing program. So it is the highest level fellowship program in all of America. It is run by the Office of the President. The President, him or herself, picks those folks after an exhaustive process of application and interviews that lasts well over 6 months. In my year, they chose 12 fellows. Previous fellows include people like Colin Powell and Doris Kearns Goodwin and multiple senators and generals and things like this. And what you do is you serve as an assistant to a cabinet secretary for a year. And then you participate in events at the White House where you have a distinguished speaker come in and speak off the record with you, with just that speaker and just the group of fellows having a conversation 3 times a week. So you get these leadership perspectives from people that have achieved great things, like our National Security Advisor, Brent Scrowcroft, who helped with the unification of Germany. The only peaceful unification of Germany in the history of the world was carried out, in part by this man. And we got to sit and have an individual conversation with him and really learn from that person. And then you also learn how do you get things done that are important for the people of the United States at the very highest level of government, because our system, the genius of our system that was given to us by our founders under the Constitution, that system is hard to get anything done by design, because they didn't want tyranny to exist in this country again. And so you have to work with all Americans to get things done. And I got to see that firsthand there in the White House. And then later, and we can talk about it, when I served as the senior Air Force officer in the House of Representatives.
Yes, and I think, one of your experience, you're not only with military background, but you also have a chance to experienced the politics and, from White House and congressional liaisons officer. I think throughout this year, and I think why you decided to, to jump into politics and start running for a congressional seat.
So, it's interesting because I don't think of myself as a politician. My life has been dedicated to public service, and what I see going on, and I'll delve more into our specific congressional district, but I see our country on the wrong track right now, and I love this country, and I love the people in it. I love all of our communities are, really the diverse range of communities that all bring something to the table that make us collectively better. And the fact is, I see us going down the wrong track, whether it's what's going on with our economy and inflation, also both public safety at the community level and national security at the national level, and then see how we are and really aren't properly investing in the next generation. I have 3 daughters, and I want to pass on a country that's better than was given to me to them. But right now, we're not doing that. We're closing in on $31 trillion of national debt right now, which means that every baby born in America with their first breath is $100,000 in debt. That is unsustainable. At the same time, government right now is not delivering excellence for the money that they're getting through our taxes. So on a grand scale, I want to bring back fiscal sanity. I want to drive back competence in small government, and I want to deliver a nation that's in better shape and stronger to my daughters, to your family, to all of our families, next generation and the generations to come. Now, when it comes to our district, why am I specifically running here? First off, this is where my family's from. I'm 4 generations deep in the San Gabriel Valley. I was born in Arcadia and grew up in Glendora. And so when I had that job, I was my last job in the Air Force was as the senior Air Force officer, as the liaison to members of Congress, where I educated them on Air Force matters and national security matters. And then I translated Congress to our leadership of the Air Force, our chief of staff, our secretary of the Air Force, et cetera, to try to make sure that the Air Force was properly resourced and we had the policies needed so we could maintain our status as the greatest Air Force in all of the world, because it's important. It's important that we have that to maintain our position globally and to continue to drive a stable, peaceful world. I also, because when you're in the military, you get to keep your home where you grew up. I always kept my own home here when I was active duty, and I voted here in Glendora. So when I got that job, I go, well, I need to go see my congresswoman because I can be a resource to her office. I'm a constituent. And by the way, national security and the Air Force mean a lot to this area, because not only is our nation's security important, but it's also, we have a very large defense and aerospace industry in the Los Angeles area. That's important. These are jobs. And again, I go back to, these are the important people that provide us capabilities, those F-15s, F-22s, et cetera, that our military depends on. Well, I went to go meet in her office, and I got about 90 seconds on the calendar. I was asked who I was, what I do, and where I was from. The only thing that Representative Chu focused on was that I was from Glendora, California. And she goes, well, you guys have a great high school band. And she's exactly right. We do have a great high school band. I was the drum major when I was a senior. But the fact was that I got shooed out of the office after that, never was engaged again on anything. And we can talk about her national security voting record. But the fact is that instead of being a resource from the office, I had a front row seat to see how that office essentially doesn't do anything on behalf of the people of this district. Over 13 years, she's rename the post office in Sierra Madre, and that's the one piece of sponsored legislation she's got across the finish line that she's personally sponsored. And the fact is that is a long way to say why I'm running is to bring real representation to the people of this district that reflect their values and their interests, and making our country a better place.
That's wonderful. Well, let me give you a little background to our viewer. So it used to be called 28th District. I think
it used to be the 27th
District. Yeah, now it's 28 after redistricting. But this district have the population-wise, 37, close to 40% Asians, and then 28% white, and then 28% Hispanic. Actually, this is an Asian majority district that, Judy Chu is representing right now. I think, some of the things, let's go through some of her record. I mean, some of the things that the area from, Alhambra to Arcadia, from my office where located is from Rosemead to where I live in San Marino. It's all her district. In this district, I think, Judy Chu was one, the pioneer in Asia, in politics. But at the same time, last month I did when she was arrested in D.C. and then a lot of people. I did a news story analysis on why she was arrested, and then I post on my YouTube. And then, one of the things is that, people think, do you think that Congresswoman Judy Chu, the progressive agenda representing the view of Chinese American living in the 27th, now it's 28th Congressional District, you know what? 92% of Chinese residents in this area does not agree with her, does not buy her progressive agenda. They care about safety, they care about, the national debt, they care about the inflation. But I think one of the things that, I think 90%, I used to be a Democrat. 4 years ago, I have to, I cannot support the Democrat because they're not they used to be. Now, 2 years ago, I start participate in Republican because I think many of our viewers just the same first generation of immigrant. I was offering an opportunity. If I started hard, work hard, I could be successful. And this is an opportunity I want to make available for my children and for children everywhere. We are a nation of immigrants, but as long as we work hard, we excel, we compete on equal ground, we could succeed. And that's a mentality that I think Republicans have been, so popular among our Chinese community. And one of the things that, I want to go through some of the track record that Judy Chu has. Well, first of all, from her press release that she issued, she's saying, one of the things that maybe Wes could share some light because on July 14th, she issuing that, she passed, helped to pass a National Defense Authorization Act. Is she supporting our military, or this is another government spending program that's, she's supporting?
She actually voted against the National Defense Authorization Act this year. And her statement was that we do two things in there that she didn't like. One is that she believes we spend too much money on national defense. Now, I would say that we need to redirect how we spend that money on national defense, but I would not say that we necessarily spend too much, because if you look at it just in a matter of percentage of GDP, we're actually spending less than half as much as we were spending as a percentage of GDP than we were back in the 1980s. And I think everyone would agree that we live in a much more complex and dangerous world today than we did in the simpler days of the Cold War, and that the security challenges and the global challenges that we face indicate that investing in national defense is not a bad investment. The other thing that she has in there is that the National Defense Authorization Act, which is the bill that sets essentially the top line for the budget that then the appropriators then give money towards. but it also develops the policies and strategies that our Defense Department will initiate. She wanted to include legislation in that she wrote that talks to a national recreation area in the San Gabriel Mountains as well. And I think we can all agree that that is not a related topic to the National Defense Authorization Act. So the fact that her own party wouldn't even include that in there is indicative that she's barking up the wrong tree with that legislation. And by the way, I disagree with her legislation, but we can talk about that separately. But voting against the National Defense Authorization Act for those reasons, I think, is extremely misguided. And I think it shows a lack of understanding of national security issues and what it takes to resource our nation's security, because we are a global nation, and to provide that kind of influence overseas requires a deployable military capability that is frankly not cheap and takes a lot of hard work to manage. And her voting against it for those two reasons, I think, are I think is disappointing.
Yeah, and at the same time, we all remember, a couple years ago when California pushed SCA 5, they want to change the constitution and allow UC system to consider race as a factor in admitting the students, and also the Proposition 16, Proposition 16. Maybe you could shed some light on, what Judy's position on those two issues is.
Yeah, first, and again, disappointing is she was a vociferous supporter of both of those efforts, and continues to hold those policies positions as a senior member of the House Progressive Caucus. I think we can agree that you're never going to solve discrimination or racism by practicing discrimination and racism. The way to fix it is to get rid of that. And I go back to what you said, which I think is so important, that generations of immigrants have come to the country to take advantage of the opportunities here, that if they work hard and they excel, they will given the opportunities to succeed. And when we start moving away from that promise, we move away from the fundamentals of this nation. Do we have flaws in our nation? Yes. Our founders said we were forming a more perfect union. We are never going to be perfect. We always need to get better. There is discrimination, and we need to get rid of it, but you don't solve it with state-sponsored discrimination or racism. All I have to do is point to my own wife, who is, if you didn't know this, she is an immigrant from South America. And the greatest thing that I've ever done for this country is keeping her here, where she got a doctorate at American University and has made an extreme difference for this country and for the globe, previously at the Inter-American Development Bank, and now as a senior executive. And because of the Hatch Act, I can't say where she works in the federal government, but she's trying to make our government better by delivering excellence. And the fact is that I cried when she became a naturalized citizen, because it was one of the most beautiful ceremonies I've ever seen in my life. And like many people that have immigrated here and taken that oath to be a citizen, she is even more American and more patriotic than I am. And the fact is, that's true of our immigrants here. They come here to work hard, and that's what keeps us being this dynamic nation that we are. We bring in new people and new ideas. Our legal immigration system is an American superpower. And the fact is, if you start introducing state-sponsored discrimination and racism, we are going to lower those opportunities for all Americans, including those that are newly here.
Yeah. Well, Wes, I understand that you also have a family member who is an immigrant community. Now, it seems that, Judy has been very popular among the Chinese community. They've been shaking hands, taking photos, and cutting ribbons on all that. But I want someone who could pass a law that's fair to our community. I want to have a Congress member who could balance our checkbook. Can you do that if you get elected?
I think we can, but that requires us to do some very, very hard work in Washington, D.C. One of the things that I'd like to do right from the start is there are two key things that Congress has to do every year. One of them is to pass a budget. The other one is to conduct oversight of the federal agencies to ensure they're delivering on what Congress told them to deliver on. We're failing both ways. Yes. And it's because we're not rolling up our sleeves and doing that hard work. So the first thing that I think we should do is have a Congressional Accountability Act where if Congress doesn't pass a budget on time, then they're not allowed to leave, they're not allowed to take a break, and they're not allowed to get paid until they actually pass a budget every year. I also believe that we need to institute some kind of forcing function. I think the easiest way would be an amendment to drive towards a balanced budget, because without that forcing function, what we see is spend, where we're to the point where we're $31 trillion in debt. So being a true fiscal conservative means that you have to make some hard decisions on funding levels. You need to make some hard decisions on how you balance revenue coming in with expenses going out. One of the things that government doesn't do currently that all of our businesses do, whether we're small businesses or large businesses, is have a difference on the balance sheet between investment costs and expenses. And so right now, say with infrastructure, which I would say is an investment in the future. We need the infrastructure to be able to have a thriving economy. Right now, that is weighted the same as a Medicare expense. One's an investment and one is, part of taking care of our citizenry. So I think understanding that, bringing some of these business aspects to how we do budgeting, how we pass these bills is absolutely vital. And then getting back to the other piece is Congress needs to do real oversight and really drive accountability all the way through our systems. Our federal government is increasingly failing at delivering on their mission. And I chalk that up to increasing mediocrity and incompetence at the federal level because people are not being held accountable. And that is the job, first and foremost, of the executive branch. But if it's not doing it, guess what? The congressional, the legislative branch needs to do that. And they're not currently doing it. Instead, they're spending way too much time on tribal politics and not enough on delivering for the citizens of the nation, much less the citizens here in the San Gabriel Valley and the San Gabriel Mountains.
Sounds good. Now, Wes, I pose a challenge for you. If you get elected as a congressman for the 28th district, are you willing to set up an Asian Pacific API advisory committee so that you could listen to our community's concern and then, propose some implement some of the policy that benefit the Asian community as well as the community at large?
100%, because I think that, our history as a nation, you'll see, going all the way back to de Tocqueville in 1835, when he wrote about American democracy. What's unique about America is we come together as communities and we serve as communities, and those communities have, cultural background, interests, etc., that can be unique, and then some that are shared across communities. So doing that is absolutely necessary. One of the things that I did when I first started this effort was reach out to all communities, and I found out about an organization called the CACA, the Chinese American Citizens Alliance.
Yes.
And I not only did I join them at a meeting, but I've now actually joined as a member. I was sworn in about a week and a half ago in the Greater San Gabriel Valley Lodge, and I think really integrating into the community is the only way to understand what are the community's issues, what are their interests, and how you can advocate for them. And we need to do that across the various diverse communities of this district. I mean, this district, like you showed, it really looks like California, which is great, and it's very vibrant. But each community has a unique aspect about it, and we really have to engage with them. And I think having that advisory committee would be vital.
Yeah, I think I want to take up for you, and I want to urge people just to do a comparison. Dig up a little bit track record. It's easy. Make it transparent. A lot of time I was frustrated. I have a big argument with Evan Chow, who was assemblyman representing 49th district. And then his voting record does not reflecting our community value. So that is, Ed had been a good friend of mine for 20-some years. I supported him when he ran for school board. I support him when he attempted to run for congressman, when he ran for assembly. But what his voting record does not reflect what the community want.
Yeah,
so,
and I think that's a factor of, I think it's misplaced priorities. As an elected official, remember when our founders wrote the Constitution, that there weren't the parties the way they are now. And every elected member needs to focus on at a congressional level, at the national and the constituents, what is good for the country and what is good for our constituents.
Yes.
And we shouldn't be a rubber stamp for a party or for a tribe. We need to really represent all of the people. In fact, I have friends in the district who have tried to engage with Representative Chu's office. And when they went to go meet with her, at one of the functions that she was at, not in her office, but she recognized him and said, "Oh, you're a Republican. I don't have to talk to you." That's exactly the wrong focus. If you're not delivering on the interests of the people in your district, you are not representing them. And I think that's what what you saw there.
Yeah, I think one of the things that they should not take for granted just because they're Chinese American. We should vote for them just because they're Chinese. I think they should not be lying to us. I told Ed, Ed, don't pick on me and tell me that it was running. I'm a lawyer. I could read the bill. I could do research on what your track records. You're not doing the things the community wants you to do. You're catering to the progressive agenda, which the community does not want. I think, Wes, I'm very happy that you're coming out to run. You're very qualified, and I hope that, more and more viewers like us who could, who support you and who want to thank you for your communities, your service had done for our community and for our country. And I want you to continue to serve our country as a congressman. Thank you for spending time with us.
Daniel, thank you for this opportunity to talk to you and talk to your audience. And please, I wouldn't be doing this right if I didn't highlight that. Go to the website, weshallmanforcongress.org. Love to have everybody's help in this, because really this is not an effort from one person. This is an effort on behalf of the community to really bring back a voice for this community in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.